Keli was the kind of boy who always carried more in his heart than he ever let out through his lips. He sat in the back of classrooms, scribbling thoughts in notebooks that no one would ever read. To his friends, he seemed quiet, even distant at times, but inside, his mind was loud, so loud it often felt unbearable. There were jokes he thought of but never told, questions he wanted to ask but swallowed, and feelings he longed to express but couldn't. One afternoon, sitting on the steps of his college, Keli watched a friend walk away. He wanted to call out, to say something simple, something honest, but the words stayed locked behind his teeth. That night, he replayed that moment again and again. What if he had spoken? What would have changed? That thought haunted him far more than anything he actually said that day. And that's the strange truth about unspoken words. Sometimes the silence becomes louder than any voice. Psychologists often describe this as the weight of incomplete communication. Human beings are wired for connection. When a thought remains unsaid, the brain doesn't just drop it. Instead, it lingers. Neuroscientists call it the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for unfinished experiences to stay alive in our memory, pressing on us, demanding resolution. A sentence left hanging is remembered more vividly than one neatly concluded. And in relationships, the words we hold back become the unfinished sentences of our lives. Think about it. When was the last time you left something unsaid? Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was anger. Whatever it was, your silence carried meaning. And here's where psychology gets fascinating. Silence is never neutral. To Keli, silence was protection, a way to avoid embarrassment, rejection, or vulnerability. But to his friend walking away that day, silence might have meant indifference. The same silence, two completely different interpretations. That's because our brains are not comfortable with blank spaces. If someone doesn't tell us how they feel, we don't simply leave it at that. We invent a story to explain the gap. If a loved one doesn't reply, we might assume they're upset. If a teacher pauses too long, we think we gave the wrong answer. If a friend doesn't say goodbye, we start to wonder if we've done something wrong. This is called attribution, the way our minds fill silence with assumptions. And most of the time, those assumptions lean toward the negative. For Keli, this created a cycle. The more he stayed silent, the more others misinterpreted his silence, and the more distant he felt. And that's the hidden danger of unspoken words. They don't just live inside us, they change the world outside us. They shape how others see us, how they respond to us, and ultimately, how our relationships unfold. But here's the paradox. Silence can also be powerful. In therapy, silence is often used as a tool, giving space for emotions to surface without pressure. In conversations, silence can communicate empathy, patience, or even love. Picture a mother sitting beside her child, saying nothing, yet saying everything. In those moments, silence is not emptiness, it's presence. So how do we tell the difference? How do we know when silence is healing and when it is hurting? The answer lies in intention. Unspoken words that come from fear, avoidance, or hesitation often turn into regret. But silence chosen with awareness, silence that communicates care, can deepen connection. Keli didn't realize this yet. To him, all silence felt the same. It was only later, when he looked back at the moments that defined him, that he understood. The words he never said carried as much power as the ones he did. And maybe you felt this too. Maybe there's a person in your life you wish you had spoken to differently. Maybe you replay conversations in your head, hearing the words you should have said instead of the ones you did. That's not weakness, that's psychology at work. Our minds are wired to notice what's missing, to hold on to unfinished business, and to remind us of the importance of expression. But here's the real curiosity. If unspoken words are so heavy, why do we keep holding them back? Why do people like Keli, and maybe like you, choose silence when words could change everything? That's where we need to go deeper, because behind every unsaid word lies a story of fear, of culture, of vulnerability, of the belief that silence will hurt less than honesty. And yet, as we'll see, it's often the silence that hurts the most. So why do we hold back? Why do people like Keli, and perhaps people like us, choose silence when words might free us? The first answer is fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear that the truth will make things worse, not better. Evolutionary psychology shows us that human beings are social creatures, and our survival once depended on belonging to the group. Being rejected wasn't just emotional pain, it once meant danger. That ancient wiring still whispers in our modern minds. If I speak, I might lose connection. If I stay silent, at least I'm safe. But what our brain frames as safety often becomes a prison. The second answer is vulnerability. Words make us visible. To say, I care about you, or I disagree, or I'm hurt, is to step into the open. Silence hides us, and sometimes hiding feels easier. Yet psychologists have found again and again that vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, research by Brené Brown and others shows that vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. We can only be loved if we are seen, and we can only be seen if we speak. The third answer is habit. Many of us grew up in environments where emotions were not openly expressed. Maybe Keli grew up in a home where silence was normal, where feelings were implied but never spoken. In psychology, this is called a communication pattern, a style learned in childhood that shapes how we interact as adults. For some, silence becomes the default language, but default doesn't mean destiny. Awareness can change the story. Let's pause here. Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who matters to you. There are words pressing at the edge of your lips, a truth, an apology, an expression of love. You feel it rising, but then, silence. You swallow it back down. The moment passes. On the surface, nothing changed. But inside, something did. That feeling doesn't vanish. It lingers like a letter you never mailed. And sometimes, those unsent letters accumulate until they weigh more than all the words you've ever spoken. This is where psychology offers us a powerful insight. The cost of unspoken words is not just external. Lost opportunities, broken relationships, missed connections. The cost is also internal. Suppressing emotions has been linked in studies to increase stress, lower well-being, and even physical strain on the body. It's not that every thought needs to be spoken. Wisdom is knowing when silence is golden. But when silence becomes a shield against truth, it quietly erodes us. Keli eventually learned this. Years later, looking back, he didn't regret the words he said. He regretted the ones he didn't. He regretted the times he stayed quiet when honesty might have healed. He realized that silence can protect you in the short term, but rob you in the long term. And maybe that's the paradox we all face. Silence feels safe in the moment, but words are what set us free. But let me open a new loop for you. If silence is so costly, how do we break free? How do we learn to speak the words we've kept buried? The first step is awareness. Notice the moments when you stay silent, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. Ask yourself, what am I protecting and what am I losing? Sometimes the act of naming the silence is the first crack in its armor. The second step is courage in small doses. Psychology teaches us about exposure, the gradual facing of what we fear. If speaking your truth feels overwhelming, start small. Say one honest thing today, even if it's just, I felt nervous, or I missed you. Each word spoken weakens the grip of silence. The third step is compassion. Not every unspoken word is failure. Sometimes silence was the best we could do with the tools we had. Forgive yourself for the moments you stayed quiet. Regret can teach us, but it doesn't have to chain us. And maybe that's the greatest lesson Keli learned. Words are not just sounds, they are bridges. Bridges between people, between hearts, between the present and the future. To leave words unspoken is sometimes to leave the bridge unfinished. But to speak, even imperfectly, is to lay the first plank. So ask yourself, what bridge is waiting for you to build it? Whose life might change if you spoke the words sitting quietly in your chest? Psychology shows us the mechanics of silence, but only you can decide when it's time to break it. Because in the end, the unspoken words don't disappear. They wait, they linger, they echo in the spaces between people. And perhaps the most human thing we can do, the most courageous, the most transformative, is to give them a voice. And if you take nothing else from Keli's story, take this. The psychology of unspoken words isn't just about silence. It's about the hidden truths we carry, the bridges we've yet to build, and the possibility that the very words we're most afraid to say might be the ones that set us free.